Hey everyone, it's Suey here, and I'm coming to tell you that I have finished my first classic of the year, or the one that I'm counting as a classic anyway, for the Classic 6 challenge that I'm kind of hosting. I'm not doing a whole lot to actually host it, just trying to encourage everyone to read some classics and share with me and just up our number for classics read this year. So the first one that I read is this one, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. This one was published in 1968. So according to my definition, which is has to be published before 1975 or sooner, to be counted as a classic and something that maybe, is kind of a long-lasting book or made a big buzz or well talked about. I don't know. Anyway, Tori and I found this one at a used bookstore when we visited Las Vegas, I think it was, in October. And I was like, oh, I've heard of that one, kind of, but I don't know anything about it. Well, since getting my hands on and reading it, I realize that yes, it is the inspiration for Blade Runner, which is actually a movie I've never seen. But yeah, heard plenty about. Figured I would do a review that's longish and not on the shorts for this book, since I'm trying to push the classics this year. I don't know if this one is popular enough that most people have read it. It's about the world in the future from when he wrote this, so from the 60s. And in this book, it says it's taking place in 2021. I read somewhere that he originally had it in 1990 something. And then for later versions, he changed it. So I find that interesting. It's so funny to me to read books written, 50 years ago or more that are predicting the future and to kind of see what they get right and what they get wrong. In this future, there's been like a world war and there's nuclear dust that has contaminated the land. And many people have gone to a different planet, I guess. Off planet to a colony. On Mars. I think it's on Mars. Yes. To a colony on Mars. And some of the people have to stay back in Earth. And I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I think there was some sort of thing to figure out who got to go to Mars or not. And we are following two characters in this book. One of them is a bounty hunter, he calls himself. And the other one is a special, which means that he has been adversely affected by the nuclear dust and his IQ is very low, and he has been considered as kind of a throwaway person, and he has no chance of going to Mars and just doing menial labor, I think, if I'm understanding right. Our other guy, I am not exactly sure why he wasn't chosen to go to Mars or why he's still on the planet, but in this society there are androids who are not well looked upon. It's his job to kill them, or what does he call? They call it retire them. And now I can't remember the word. Retire them, I think. Doesn't think of it as killing, but they are very, very, very similar to humans, and it's hard to tell exactly who is an android and who is not. So he has a test that he gives them that measures their empathy. And empathy is a big, huge thing in this book. In fact, all the people have an empathy machine, an empathy box, is that what they called it? And they hang on to it, and it puts them in sort of a virtual world where they're following their prophet dude. And I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of that is. That was something that kind of went over my head. It connects them to their religious leader. And also they have this mood organ thing, which they can dial to certain spots, and it will change their mood, and so they can choose what mood they would like to be. It's another futuristic thing that I found interesting. But the empathy thing is really huge because they assume that androids do not have empathy, and so they will fail the test. And that's how they decide whether or not they can go ahead and retire them or not. And so our guy wakes up on this. It's a crazy day. I think that most of this takes place in one day. He ends up being asked to go after this group of androids that have escaped from Mars, I guess. and they are of a special certain brand or level of android. And he goes first to the place that makes these androids and learns about them, and sort of falls in love with the girl, one of the prototypes of this kind of android. And she tells him she's an android, but he doesn't have to retire her, I guess. I don't know why. I guess she's not a renegade android or something. But he kind of falls in love with her a little bit. I mean, the writing in this is so unemotional. So it's like you can't really tell if somebody's liking somebody else or not. I feel like that was kind of a style back in the day for certain books. I mean, show me a science fiction book from back in the day where there's some emotion. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just feel like it's so dry or something. So he goes first there, and then he ends up trying to track down these other androids, and they can fool him pretty good. He gets tricked several times, and things are a little confusing. And in the meantime, some of these androids end up finding our special guy, who is living off in an apartment building all by himself, and he discovers that there's somebody else there, and it turns out she's an android, and she actually ends up that she looks exactly like the other android that our bounty hunter dude fell in love with. And now our special dude is kind of liking her. They end up hunkering down with our special guy, and he thinks he's going to protect them. And anyway, then our other guy tracks him down there, and there's sort of this confrontation with the androids and our bounty hunter and the little other guy. And it's just so weird. It's all so weird. In this futuristic world, besides the androids and the mood board and the empathy box, we have hover cars, and they go really, really fast. You can get from San Francisco to Seattle in an hour. They still had TVs, just regular TVs, and they had video calling phones, but they weren't phones that they carried around with them. They had to go to a phone and dial it. But people's faces would be on the screen. I can't remember. There was a couple other things that seemed so interesting. You could feel the 60s world mixed with this futuristic world that he was creating. And it felt like a little bit of a clash in my brain sometimes. I really enjoyed it. It took me a minute to get into it. But once I got into it, I read it real fast. It's not very long. But like I said, the writing style is just so bland for me compared to the kinds of things I'm used to reading nowadays. I think it was just probably how it was then. I don't know. I didn't feel things. I wasn't anxious about any characters. I wasn't truly invested in characters, but I was interested in the world and kind of the events that were happening. Anyway, now maybe I'll go watch Blade Runner. I don't know. They say it's loosely based. I looked stuff up afterwards to try and understand things, but I saw that his friend wrote some sequels that are called Blade Runner 2 and Blade Runner 3 or something. So they actually really capitalized on the whole Blade Runner thing and made some more books later on in this world for the Blade Runner fandom, basically. The other thing that's interesting about this world is that they revere animals like crazy. There's hardly any living animals. They have a lot of fake animals, but living animals are worth a ton of money, and that's what everyone aspires to, is to having an animal. They keep them up on their roofs because the rooftop is where they take off and land with their cars, and then that's where they have their space for their animals. And our guy ends up with a goat. The goat ends up being fake in the end also. No, was the goat fake? I can't remember now. I can't remember if the goat was actually a fake goat. Maybe the goat was real. And the one android that the guy fell in love with turns out to be a real awful person, an awful android. And then our guy, after the big confrontation with the androids, and he ends up killing them all, of course, he goes off on some sort of weird quest, and he ends up in the middle of this virtual reality world that they do with their empathy boxes. And he couldn't really tell if it was real or not real. I couldn't tell what was going on. But while he was there, he finds a toad, and he's so excited, and he brings it back. But it turns out that the toad is a fake toad after all. What was the fake toad doing in the middle of the desert where he was going on this journey? Who knows? But it's really sad that it ended up being a fake toad. And it just kind of ends with him kind of trying to recover from this whole crazy day, and his wife deciding that she's going to take care of the toad. Okay, so I don't really know if I was supposed to get some real huge light bulb moment there at the end or not, but anyway, so that's this book, To Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. This has been an interesting book for my first classic of the year. The next one on the list is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which I will be reading real soon for our March's book club. Hopefully I will enjoy that one too. It's been on our list to read forever, and we are finally getting to it. Oh, it's on my Kindle, which makes me reminds me I need to go download all my Kindle books, I think. Yeah. There's what I thought of that book. I'd probably give it, I don't know if it's totally probably 3 stars, 3.5 on Storygraph, where you can do halves maybe. Because, it was interesting, but just kind of there. Tell me what classics you've been reading, if you're keeping up, if you're trying to do the 6 classics this year, or if that's easy peasy and you do tons more than that normally or whatever. Until next time, happy reading. Bye.